Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another Quarantine with Brennifry. As always, I'm Tori. Today, we're going to be talking about Bend It Like Beckham, the movie. Very, very fun, very excited. We all have lots and lots to say about the movie. Pretty easy week so far. One of my schools ended for summer. Yay, summer. Still in session, not two of the other ones, but we're getting there. My share of the week is Jason from Power Rangers, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers specifically. He's got his power sword. At least, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's not Rocky anyways. But he's got his power sword and he's very cool. It's from the Funko collection through Target. I don't know if you can see the info on the bottom, but Funko. Target did a line. Jen got it for me for my birthday, which I'm very happy for because I really like the art on the Funko collection. Like it's very kind of comic bookish, and that makes me very happy. I like the proportions, like the diamonds and stuff are like very like exaggerated, and like their feet and his like shoulders, his elbow and gloves are all very exaggerated, and I like that very much. But yeah, that's my share of the week. I'm gonna pass it on over to Brenda.
Hi everyone, this is Brenda. This week has been pretty hectic and mellow at the same time. I've been grading a lot because it's our last week at DH. But I also, to kind of counteract that, because I do end up reading a lot of student papers. I started reading a book called The Dark Fantastic. It's about this. Well, it's not about. It's actually a critical analysis on a Black feminist critical analysis of magic and the way that Black audiences interact with speculative fiction. So it's a really interesting read. So I'm kind of there right now. But I also started doing a lot of housework this week. So I've been physically active, which, if you know anything about me, is not normal for me. But it's helping me kind of just stave off the anxiety and just be normal, I think. But yeah, it's been a pretty chill week. My share of the week, to stay on brand with our super best friends idea from Bend It Like Beckham, I have these two wonderful ladies, Batgirl and Supergirl. This is probably one of my favorite DC friendships just because they're just so light and happy. Jen got these two gals for me. I think it was when I started a new job last year, just to kind of help me through the transition. And I sat them on my desk and they just bring a smile to my face because they're so dorky and sweet, and I don't know, they're my favorite. So they're always together because they're super best friends forever.
Are they from a specific collection?
So they're the superhero. So I never take the tags.
DC superhero girls.
I never
Yeah.
take the tags off my toys because I don't know why, but yeah, they're little rag dolls. Yeah.
Fantastic. My sister's obsessed with DC superhero girls.
I love DC superhero girls, but yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, she loves it.
I am going to pass it over to Jen.
Hi guys, this is Jennifer. My week was okay, a bit slow, and then also like I had the end of a program happen, so that was kind of sad as well. But
sad.
Endings can be beautiful as well. In terms of just what I'm doing in my like other life, right, my downtime, a lot of Animal Crossing. So I finally, I think, finished the game. And that I got everything unlocked, so now I can actually like demolish my island and like set up like more layout changes. So that I'm in the middle of that, except I'm a Virgo, so I am also like retentive about aesthetics. So now I'm in this like blank space and I don't know what to do with it. So that's kind of been my trauma. That's kind of been my trauma for the week is that I don't know what to do with this and I have to figure it out. So I've started following a bunch of like design Animal Crossing Instagrams just to get inspiration.
That's hilarious.
That's the most Jen thing I've heard all week though.
I'm totally jealous of like a friend of mine. Her name's Allie, and she has a Wonderland theme for her Animal Crossing, and it's legit bonkers and so amazing. And I'm just like, oh my god, my island is not even half of that yet. And so it's just really aesthetic. It's so aesthetic. It's so on brand with her. I'm in awe. Anyways, so that's been my life, a lot of Animal Crossing. It's actually rather therapeutic because it's a very slow game. and I feel like I've gotten a lot out of it for the money that I spent on it, because I spent about the same amount of money on Pokemon, and I finished that game in 35 hours in 7 days. So, and I'm done with it. So I kind of like the idea of like I'm still playing with Animal Crossing and still kind of doing things with it, and it's ongoing. I can just come back and do stuff on the island and get out. So I totally recommend the game. I was a newbie, so definitely go read up on it before you purchase it or ask people about it, because I was just making a lot of dumb mistakes at first. I've been also watching a lot of TV. I just recently finished Mixed Dish. It's really good. Thank you for the recommendation, Brenda. It was really interesting to kind of view that, and how the show is talking about mixed identity, and how like Bo is constantly being asked to choose either two sides, either her black side or her white side, and not being able to really exist both sides, but she's kind of pushing forward by saying like, I want to be both sides, right? Those are two of my identities. And so that's a really interesting show if you want to really get into it in a very like quick half-hour kind of sitcom capacity. Just I think the show does a really good job of like talking about that conversation. In terms of what I'm going to show you guys, a lot of graduations are happening this week, or it just happened. So, and it kind of sucks that a lot of them are virtual. So happy graduation to anyone out there who's getting this year. You did an amazing job. You're going to do great. Do not let this be your stop. You're going to do amazing things out there. So this is for my graduation from 2017 when I graduated with my MA in literature. I'm sort of, obviously I like giving gifts. So I, for a long time, was pondering what gift I was going to give Brenda for her graduation. And so I was looking at a lot of things, and in the past I got her like this like cute little Pikachu in a Christmas costume, and then so I started looking to see if Pikachu had a costume for graduation, and he did. And so I got her that version. I think I got her a very smaller version from the Pokemon Center of that. I was like, I'm going to get you this. And I kind of want one myself. So I kind of pressured her to get me one. So we gave I'm the worst person to give gifts for, because I'll end up buying things for myself unless I tell people to buy it for me. So I told her to get one. We both got one, and we were called Brennifry. So I thought that was really cute that we ended up both getting our own Pikachu. And we also wore our head girl Hogwarts house. So I'm a Ravenclaw, so I got a head girl Ravenclaw. And we wore that with our regalia. But now that thing is stuck on Pikachu's for
That's so cute. It goes really well with the color scheme too.
Right? So cute.
One of my favorite pictures, because after our graduation, we went to a celebratory dinner, and I took my Pikachu with me because mine was a little bit smaller, so it's a little easier to like take him everywhere, which is ideal because I've always told Jen, I think in my head I'm this big and I have a really massive personality, so that Pikachu's perfect for me, right? So I have a picture of Pikachu just kind of having a drink, because mind you, we graduated after having worked on our thesis. And while I would not give that up ever, and I wouldn't trade that experience for the world, it was tough. It was a tough experience. And Pikachu next to that drink just kind of, I feel, encapsulates all of it, right? Like the entire ridiculousness of the process, but also the joy at the same time. So,
and your guys' graduation was so long. It was like 5 hours.
Oh, we were sitting in that sun forever. So like
forever.
Forever.
Was insane.
So at our commencement ceremony, like the MAs like go first. So like we get hooded first. Like everyone from like every college gets hooded first, and then the BAs. And there's a bunch of BAs and BSs, which is congratulations. That's great, right? But our part was over in like 20 minutes.
And for your guys' particular one, they decided to combine multiple schools of the college together. So it wasn't just like arts and humanities. It was like arts, humanities, and like science, and like all these other ones like tied together. And it was so long. And it took us like an hour and a half just to leave campus after the graduation.
Right. The parking situation was crazy.
A nightmare.
it took my family like 2 hours to leave the parking lot.
I remember you saying that you were gonna lose your reservations, like for dinner. Like,
well, we ended up going to dinner like 9 o'clock at night.
yeah.
You know, I'm Chinese, and I'm like, Dad, I want Chinese food. And so like that's like I don't know, like that's kind of like what I think fancy, right? So like we went, so you know, the best food to get that for is in Alhambra or Monterey Park. And so like we were, you know, in Carson, because that's we graduated from the Sills, and we had to get all the way to Monterey Park and Alhambra, like, and we were stuck in the parking lot for an hour and a half or 2 hours, and
it
then
was insane.
it was absolutely insane. But you know, I thank you for bringing that up, because like, you know, that's one thing that really made our graduation, I think Brenda can speak a little bit to it too, was really special, was that, you know, Tori, you were there, you had graduated like 2 years before us. Christine was there, Terry was part of our graduation ceremony. I think Livia had made it too.
Yeah, Christine, Livia, and I, we were like the nicest people. We were sitting, right? And then this like people came to see their kid, grandchild, whomever, and they were elderly, and we gave them our seats and stood your entire like 5-hour ceremony.
Oh my God.
For 5 hours? I didn't know that. I'm so sorry. And thank you though.
Thank you.
We were like, these elderly people were like standing, and we were like, that's unacceptable. Please have our seat. Like, and
oh my God. See, like now we're finding, oh my God, thank you. Yeah.
It was not a small stadium. It was not a small stadium. But it tells you how packed it was, right?
Oh yeah, it was StubHub Stadium, and it was packed. That's where LA Galaxy plays, right?
Right. Yeah.
And it was every single seat was full. Every single seat.
It was, yeah.
That stadium holds 27,000 people, by the way. I know this because I'm a soccer hooligan. Well, not hooligan, but
it was also kind of rough on us, because not only did we go first and we had to wait for everyone else, you know, great, you know, we did that in the past, right? But we had an afternoon ceremony, so we were sitting right under the sun,
direct sunlight,
for a lot of hours. And I don't think I had sunglasses on. I think, yeah. And obviously Brenda is like a porcelain doll, so I mean.
So I was not gifted with melanin or much of it, right? Unfortunately, which meant I just kind of seared. The worst part was, so Jen is right. Our hooding ceremony was about 20 minutes. When I went up to get hooded, my instructor or my mentor, who I love, she's a dear friend, but she put the hood over me, didn't put it all the way through, and then ended up like pulling my face back. Our graduation ceremony was being recorded, and the entire stadium saw my head almost be ripped off by my mentor and friend and my hood, right? So it was an experience.
And then they were letting you guys leave early. Like I remember seeing people go to get up to leave, and they were like, "You can't leave."
Yeah, so they blocked the exits. Like a few people were able to manage to get out, but for the most part, they blocked the exits, and so we were kind of stuck there the entire time. So it was a rough ceremony, but it was a lovely experience at the same time, and rough. It was it was life, right? It was everything and nothing at the same time.
I think the biggest like takeaway from this is that, and you know, Brenda can talk to this a little bit, and maybe Tori, you can talk about your own commencement experience. But at least what made the commencement experience special for me were the people that showed up, right? And the people I was sitting with. And so like in some sort of way, like it wasn't necessarily like shaking the hand of a dean that I didn't feel close to, or a president that, you know, I never really see on a daily basis anyways. But it was like being able to sit next to Brenda, who, you know, I went to school with the entire time, right? And being able to sit next to Terry, who also was part of our thesis crowd and grad experience, right? Being able to know that my parents were up there in the crowd, that like my friends were apparently standing the entire time up there in the crowd, like that's what made like commencement special. And so, you know, I know COVID is tough for everyone. If there's a way to do some sort of like, you know, drive by with all your friends, like, or family members,
blare on the horn as you drive by,
right, push on horns, or do a virtual Zoom thing and like have them speak about just how great you are and how special you are and how proud they are. Like, trust me, like I feel like that's gonna help make up some of it, if not, it's not gonna make up all of it, but some of it at least. So that, that was my biggest takeaway from my commencement, because other than that, it's just sunburns and, it's really hot, guys.
Well, yeah, and caps and gowns are not necessary. They don't breathe well.
They don't.
They really don't respect gelled hair well.
No.
And the cap just kept flying off my head, like at least for my BA ceremony kept. So I got a little smarter and bought bobby pins for my second one and finally pinned that thing on. But it just didn't want to stay on my head. But yeah, I don't know if you guys have any words of wisdom for commencement or folks.
I have no words of wisdom. Just congratulations, class of 2020. I'm sorry that you were dealt such a shitty hand, but you know what? That doesn't diminish your work. Congratulations. Thank you for your resilience, and we look forward to the future you guys are going to build, because the present kind of sucks.
Yeah. Tori, anything?
Yeah, no, I had a morning commencement session, and Brenda and Jen came to mine. They like unknowingly sat behind my parents, and I remember them like looking like, these people are really loud, and I remember texting you, those are my parents. Because my dad was
I think they reminded us of like Latino families, right?
Yeah. My dad was being very, very obnoxious in a good way. But he was just very
proud of you.
Yeah, I'm like the first one in my family to like walk the stage. And I mean, my mom went back to school when I was in school too, and went much further than I did. But like, I'm their first child to go to, so I'm the first one in my dad's family to really go to school. My uncle has a master's degree, I'm pretty sure, actually, but I don't know. I think it's in like accounting, but I don't know. I don't want to put words in his mouth. But yeah, so it was very like much a family first. Like I was the first grandchild. No, that's a lie too, because my cousin Sarah has a degree. But like things like that, right? But yeah, it was really nice though. I got hooded by an instructor I really liked, which was really nice. It was Dr. Lee. So it was really special. I was sitting next to someone that you guys know, I won't say their name, but you know who they are, who was a giant train wreck the entire commencement ceremony, and it was just so much fun to watch that unfold. But because she was getting real sloppy with her like thigh flask she strapped on. Yeah. And yeah, she's great. I had a really great time. I was Livia and Christine were also sitting near me, which was really
that's right.
cool.
You guys graduated at the same time.
Yeah. They were sitting near me. We walked at the same time, but I think they stayed an extra semester for thesis stuff, but we walked at the same time. I think no, Tomek wasn't. Was Tomek there? Tomek wasn't there. I don't know.
Tomek graduated like a year before.
Okay. Yeah, I felt like I saw him that day though. I don't know.
He probably worked the ceremony.
That makes sense. But yeah, no, it was great, and a lot of my instructors went that weren't part of the hooding. They just went because they really liked our cohort, as well as Brenda, Jen, and I were all in the same cohort. Some of us just kind of finished slightly earlier than others, depending on career paths taken, choices taken, as far as like what they wanted to do specifically.
The number of units we ended up taking, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. A number of units, how involved with SI we were or were not, just a bunch of different factors, right? Which is very, very common. But over that kind of like 3-ish year spread, like our instructors like went to like everything for us. They really liked us, which was really nice. And so foster those relationships, because it's a really nice experience to be able to just, I know that a lot of you guys can't walk the stage physically, but it's just really nice to just like have that kind of cathartic, like I did, like just take that moment and just be like, you did it. Like you really, like you did it, and congratulations. And it means something. Like you did something really, really good and hard.
Yeah. So again, congratulations. You will be bright and brilliant in the future. And you already are. So, in light of, the theme that we have going on this month, again, we wanted to pick titles related to Asian Pacific Islander Month, especially with COVID out there. There's a lot of, just hate out there for Asians. I didn't know how to say that, so I'm just going to say
that's absolutely what it is.
Right, I'm just going to say it plainly. There's just a lot of hate out there for Asians, and we wanted to, in our small way, to kind of combat that by highlighting a lot of the titles and a lot of the things that we grew up with that were Asian related, Asian centered, just to show our love and appreciation. So our title for this month and this week is Bend It Like Beckham. It was actually a recommendation that Brenda brought to light. We wanted to bring something that kind of hit upon different areas of Asian diversity, and also kind of hit about different areas and diversity of what popular culture means. Because, while Bend It Like Beckham is a soccer-centric movie, soccer in itself is a fandom. It has a huge fandom around the world, and, a lot of folks get really geeky about, jerseys, about teams, about players, about
Pants.
right, just about stadiums, about a lot of things. And so, Bend It Like Beckham follows the journey of Jess, who is this British Indian young woman who wants to be and aspire to be like Beckham.
She wants to be Beckham. She wants to play soccer.
Yeah, she wants to play soccer. David Beckham is a British soccer star. And has done a lot of work for this. Yes, he's done a lot of work for the soccer community. He's pretty active still. I think he just recently built, with his coalition, just recently put up the Miami stadium that he was working on for a couple of years. So this story really is about a girl's love for soccer, and we all had a really great time just rewatching it. We all watched it as young children, young teenagers, and then we forgot about it until we were thinking about what to put on for this vlog recording session. So we all rewatched it this last week, and I want to start off with, what were your thoughts, like, coming back to it after so many years?
I immediately was transported back to like 7th grade, 8th grade, whatever I was when I first watched it. And a lot of the stuff went over my head as a child, actually. Like, I didn't realize how much went over my head in terms of like representation, awareness, microaggressions, just like things that just like didn't even like register in my like head, like that just really, I was like, wow, they're really making a statement here, which I thought was great.
Yeah, definitely. I thought it was a rich film.
It aged well.
It did, and I didn't realize how rich it was until I rewatched it, and I was like, they packed a lot in terms of just like POC experience, right? Just in terms of like family experience, like
dating outside your race, homosexuality,
gender identity, right? I know I was putting together sort of like the talking points for today, and Brenda watched it right after I had put the talking points together, and she was just like, we can talk about this, we can talk about that, we talk about all of these things. Is there something in specific that you really wanted to touch upon, Brenda? Like, I don't want to like shut your voice out here.
Give me a second.
Yeah, no problem.
So we can talk a little bit about what we thought were really cool moments.
Absolutely, yeah. I think one of the things that really like on this rewatch that like kind of like I didn't realize like her best friend was gay like the first when I was watching it as a child, like because they kind of like sneak that in a little bit.
Yeah,
like,
yes.
I didn't have those like read between the lines skills at like 12. And so like that never registered for me. And then because like that part where she's like, oh, but you're Indian, and I was like, yeah, so are you. Like when I was a child, right? Like it didn't make sense to me, right? When she was talking to him, like she's like, well, how are you gonna tell your mom? Like, and all these things.
Right. That was, I didn't I don't think that landed for me either when I was younger. I was
Yeah,
like,
it went completely
okay.
over my head.
Again,
That was one of
another
the things
progressive moment.
sorry. I think that was one of the one things that I did remember, and it hit me when I first saw it, because I thought, oh, that's different, but nobody cares because it's not the focus of the film, right?
Mhm.
Not that it's not important, it totally is. It's just because it was such kind of like a small moment in the film. I thought it was a nice touch, especially when we have the backdrop of Keira Knightley's mom freaking out over the possibility that her daughter might be gay, right? So I thought that was a nice counterbalance, but at the same time, I actually do think that that's a really problematic issue on my rewatch, right? When I first saw it, I just really enjoyed it. It was a girl playing soccer who was just really good at it. But in rewatching it, looking at all the moments in which they're discussing not just racial identity but British identity, right? Because for us, I mean, we talk about what it means to be American all the time. We're not British, obviously, but American identity is so nuanced, right? And it's nuanced particularly when you're talking about race and culture. And in this case, you see interactions of Indian culture and kind of how it collides with Britishness, but also you see the Irishness with
Mhm.
Jonathan Rhys-Meyers' character. What was his name? Joe? Yes, Joe.
Yeah.
Right? And so they're both trying, like, you have these two characters, right? One is obviously brown, but the other one's white, and they're both having such a difficult time interacting with British identity, right? Because neither of them is British. So it's a really fun watch and such a layered discussion. I read an article a while ago about the director and how she was initially setting out to talk about Britishness, right? And I do think at its core, this film is very incredibly British, right? To its very core, while simultaneously everything else, right? It's encapsulating and giving us a sneak peek into what Indian British culture looks like, right? The first gen experience that we're talking about, right? Like kids, immigrant parents and their children, and the expectations and all of that. It was so layered and so well done. And I was really happy on my rewatch. I was really excitedly texting Jen late last night. I do apologize if I was overzealous in my texting.
That's probably playing Animal Crossing. So
No, that's fair enough.
yeah, I think you're hitting upon a lot of points. I think that Tori also brought up that I'm bringing up. Right, I was surprised by just how rich this film is. I just keep going back to that word. They packed a lot in, and a lot of progressive commentary as
Yes.
well. Sneaking in the gay best friend, right? Sneaking in all of these different intersections of British identity and what does it mean to be British in British society, right? We have an Indian family, right? And how they all have acclimated to British life or haven't acclimated to British life is really interesting, right? We have this, Irish main lead, romantic lead, and living in Britain, and how he's kind of combating like being Irish in England, but also being male, right? I think male with like an injury, right?
Sports injury specifically that made him unable to continue.
Right, and how does that hurt his masculinity, right? You're having to come back, like Jules is also like the British girl, but is also very counterintuitive to like that British rose image, right? So I think the film does it's trying to do a lot, and there are points of success, and of course there's always going to be points that aren't as successful, but I commend the film for trying to do as much as it did for the under the umbrella of Bend It Like Beckham, right?
Right.
See, that's one of the things that I do love about this film is that opening, right? Because it sets a tone, right? You open with this fantasy of Jess in a Man U game, right? And she's there supporting Beckham. And I always thought it was weird because, so I'm a huge soccer nerd, but I'm not a Man U fan. And for me, and for many, I think people who are on this side of the world, right, especially in Latin America, when we hear Beckham, we hear Real Madrid, right? Because the dude was just in the team, right? For us, Real Madrid and Barcelona are the two heavyweights, right? No one cares about British soccer. And no, actually, that's a lie. That's an oversimplification. But our main focus is the Spanish league, particularly those two teams. So when we hear Beckham, we hear Real Madrid, not necessarily, and the British team, right? But not necessarily Man U, and he had a huge and prolific career with Man U and Sir Alex Ferguson, right? So when you see that footage with Jess in the game itself, right? I think it's quintessentially British, right? Because it's not just football that they're playing, right? Actual football, but she's wearing a Man U shirt, which, you know, again, not British, so I can't speak to what that is like. But for those of us looking in, it's one of those hallmark things, right? That you can narrow in. It's Beckham and Jess, and they're playing soccer, right? It's just so British. But it touches on these gender things, right? Where she's the only girl on the pitch, and this is her fantasy, obviously, right? But I think there's this tension throughout the film where you see, and I think you alluded to it just now when you're talking about Joe and his injury, right? The only reason why he even got involved in girls soccer was because of his injury, right? And so it speaks to the difficulty that female sports have in terms of visibility, right? Or even just kind of getting onto the platform, which again, when we're adding and to all these discussions and we're talking about gender, I think this is a really important point that the film kind of tries to address, but ultimately doesn't have, like, the best solution is still Joe is their coach, right? And so you see the tenuous relationship that female sports kind of have with visibility and making an impact. It's not that they don't make an impact, it's just even when they make a great impact, like when the US women's soccer team won the World Cup multiple times, and they come here and no one cares, right? At least this was in the early 2000s or late 90s, right? They just won the World Cup and they show up and there's like one or two media people, right? And I think some of the former players talk about it in their documentary, and you see that kind of presented itself in Bend It Like Beckham. I mean, Jules even makes a comment about it later in the film.
Yeah, and I mean, there's like this whole kind of tension, like, oh, you're gonna leave us, Joe, because you're gonna move on to the boys team next season, and like,
and the implication,
better, air quotes.
Exactly, the implication that moving to the men's side is somehow a step up, right? And so that's really frustrating as a viewer, but also you feel it as the girls in there who are like, it's not fair.
Right.
Yeah, because they're mad at him.
Yeah.
Right. And even in terms of just access, right? The idea, like, I think there's a part in the film where Jules shows Jess, hey, I found this internet thing that shows like women's soccer in the US.
And she's like, you're lying.
Right, you're lying. And like they show like this footage and Mia Hamm's on it, right? And like it's like this, I think it's like a subscriber thing, or like it's buried deep in the internet. But it's like there wasn't.
It's like from America.
Right. It's like an export, right? Like it's
and
the only reason that Jules is able to kind of get that is because she has money and access to it, right? So even that, like the idea that, you know, when we're talking about women's sports and just the lack of funds, of the visibility, like it's being talked about in this film as well, is that only certain people can have access to it if they have the means to have access to it, right?
Yeah, and Jess is often throughout the film, she's like surprised when she's invited to a women's team that plays like in a league. She's like, what? Like, she's like, I've only ever played in the park. like this idea of a league is like so foreign to her. And then she's like, what do you mean I can't just wear my track pants and sneakers and play soccer? Like, I have to get cleats and like wear shorts.
Interesting fact, because you brought up Mia Hamm. So Bend It Like Beckham was obviously a huge hit in England and in a lot of parts of the world, but American executives were actually a little concerned about the title, because they're like, oh, American fans aren't going to know who Beckham is, right? And mind you, this is in 2003, 2002, right? They were, I mean, and to a certain degree they were right. Beckham's career, international career, was starting, right? It wasn't exactly at its peak just yet. He was actually hated in Britain at the time because he missed a free kick, but that's a side story. But anyway, here they were actually considering a different title, Bend It Like Mia, for Mia Hamm, right? Because Mia Hamm was actually really well known here. But I'm actually glad that they didn't change the title, right? Because it kind of furthers that conversation about gender expectations, right? So, and plus, Bend It Like Beckham just has a nice alliterative thing that Bend It Like, you could make it like me, I guess. Maybe. I don't know.
Like me. Yeah, that would have been
That
cool.
would work too, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that was the title and I'm just misremembering things. I don't know.
That's the sequel when just his kid does it.
Right. That would be amazing.
Also, and would
the
be
Netflix
like
original reboot.
No, because if you redo it now, it would be like Megan Rapinoe.
Oh, that's fair.
See, Brenda knows the soccer things.
But
legit, I'm gonna share this small story. So any soccer thing that I know is because of Brenda. She's like the nerd. She's telling me about things, and I'm just like, oh, okay. I found out about Real Madrid and Barcelona through her. I was like, what the fuck is that?
Well, there's this scene in Bend It Like Beckham where what's Keira Knightley's character's name?
Jules,
thank you. Where Jules' parents are sitting and the dad is explaining soccer to the mom.
Oh my, I was dying.
And I laughed because I'm like, oh my God, I'm the dad and Jen is the mom.
I'm just like
so many times.
The mustard is this and the ketchup is this and the salt and pepper.
I'm drinking a martini and I'm just like, so is this and this? Anyways, so she talks about positions all the time. For a long time she loved Landon Donovan, the soccer player for the LA Galaxy and a star player for the US team, and how he was a 10 position, right? And how that's kind of the architect of the midfield. And so one bit of trivia that I know. I hired one of my SIs, and she was a soccer player, and I'm like, oh, what position do you play? And she's like, oh, I play midfield. And I'm like, are you a 10? And she's like, yeah, I am. How do you know about that? And I'm like, oh, my friend's really into soccer. So from that moment on, that's the one thing that that person continuously tells me was so cool about me, was the fact that I knew what a 10 was. And then
I'm glad my soccer knowledge makes at least one person look cool, because it certainly doesn't do anything for me.
Meanwhile, I'm Jess when Joe's like, what position do you play? She's like, oh, I don't know, in the front on the right.
No, she's actually, where do you play? He asked her. He says, in the park. Oh, yeah. Okay, how funny was this film, though?
It was so funny. I was like, first of all, that's exactly the answer I would have given.
Tori would have been like, I play in the park, and then I would have set the part where I play to the right.
Up front on the right's usually best, yeah.
That's the level of just knowledge we both have. And Brenda's show just being like, what's up? Yeah.
One of the things about the film that I had a really hard time with, just because I was trying to place it, is I had a really hard time gauging the age group. I was like, are they in high school or are they not in high school?
No, they're actually seniors in high school, right?
Okay.
Because they get a full ride to Santa Clara in the US, here in California. And she's working on her A levels, right? So she's actually taking those tests to get into university.
Got it.
Okay. That was something I actually didn't remember, that the sister hadn't gone to university. And that was one of the stigmas that the family kind of used to kind of dissolve that marriage. And I thought that was so interesting, because I love this relationship between Jess and her sister. It's so real, it's so combative, it's combustive, and yet so supportive, right?
Yes.
So I think those one of those things that I love about the film is how you see these small communities of women helping each other out in different ways, right? And then you kind of you invite people like Joe or Jess's best friend, and at the end, the dad, right? Jess's dad in particular. So I really thought that was interesting. But the two sisters in particular, they were lovely, right? Because it was such a real representation of what family looks like. Particularly, there's this moment where the sisters' engagement has just kind of dissolved, and she throws her sister under their bus, and she tells the family everything, right? About
and she calls her a cow and a whore, and hits her, I think, even once or twice.
Right. and I mean, and it essentially destroys Jess's ability to continue going to practice, right? And yet, as the film continues, the person to look out for her and cover for her is actually her sister. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, at least to the extent that she can. And I do really enjoy that relationship, and just seeing it when they're discussing just basic things, right? There's this moment where the sister's like, do you really want to be the person who our community looks at weirdly because you married the white guy, right?
Yes.
That was so layered. I think we should spend a little time discussing that. What do you guys think?
Absolutely. I think that is such a fantastic thing to talk about, because I know for Italians, right? I mean, my dad did it, but like it's still kind of like there's been this like kind of wave with us, my cousins and I, where a lot of us didn't marry Italians, and there's this kind of like the Italian bloodline is getting too thin now, and like this, because like all of my cousins and I were all just half, because my uncle also didn't marry an Italian, and so we're all just kind of half, and we're all marrying non-Italians, and now there's this kind of fear that like culture is going to be lost, and
yeah. I thought that was really interesting, right? I have a similar
specifically with the men, because it's Italian men marrying non-Italian women, and they're like, that's where the culture loss is going to disconnect, because they're going to take over whatever your wife's culture is now.
That's interesting. I
primary.
have a similar situation in my family, but with us, it was it's race too, but it's also religion, right?
Oh yeah, religion's big with us too.
My family's actually kind of split up, right? The majority of us are Roman Catholic, but a few of us have kind of splintered off to different religions, right? And my cousin's actually dating a white woman who's formerly divorced, she is divorced, and so these are things that to me just seem ridiculous. Like, who cares? You like this person, whatever, right? But for older folks in our family, it's a little bit more nuanced and complicated, right? Because it's like, if this person doesn't understand your ways, how are they going to fit into the family, right? And so then things like Christmas, or I'm guessing, I'm just using Christmas because that's what we use, but like major holidays, right? Those are then impacted, and they're going to be viewed through a different lens, right? So I thought that was that conversation between the sister and Jess were really important. Binky is her name, sorry. Were really interesting and layered. Jess is 18. She's not even thinking about marriage. And yet it's this expectation throughout the film. The mom's like, you have to be a good Indian girl.
I was married by your age.
Right. And so those are some generational concerns that we also see there. Are quite interesting.
And her mom is like, I forget what the food is, but she's like, she's like, non-negotiable. You must learn how to cook this meat and vegetarian style. Like, she's like, absolutely unacceptable for you to not know how to make it.
Well, and I think the film does a really nice job, like going back to, the sister relationship, and just, the film ends with the sisters embarking on two different paths. And there's kind of a slight discussion at the end, just on like the different paths each takes. But, the film does an interesting job of just like trying to say like, okay, Jess is going to go to college, and that's a different kind of path that she's going to take as an Indian woman. And then her sister takes a more traditional conservative path, right? Where she wants the family, and she wants to be the wife, and she wants to be a mom, right? And, and how the mom of them is just trying to make them both just very conservative, right? And very like, you need to learn the dishes, you need to learn that's how we kind of preserve the culture, right? And you can't marry outside of that. And you're right, like a lot, my family is mixed, so, and my family is just a lot looser in terms of just my culture. I don't have a lot of these same restrictions as you both were talking about, but it's definitely, I do see like a sense of like, well, they don't understand our culture, so we need to make sure that we preserve our culture, right? And one of the scenes I want to talk about is the locker room scene, right? So locker rooms are like traumatic for in a lot of ways
for any minority. It's such I fucking hated it.
So but what was traumatic about that scene was like, Jess having to explain to like her coworkers who are white, who are British, like all the things that go on in like Indian culture, and they were all just like, they make you do that, like arranged marriages are a thing, and like kind of like being othering her for something that is very just normal for her. And I thought that was incredibly traumatizing. And I love the film for just having that moment.
Yeah, because she's so clearly uncomfortable, but she's answering it because she wants to be accepted.
Yeah.
And even also the way that it progresses, right? Because it starts off with that scene where she has to take off her shirt, right, and change into her kit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's doing it. It's not a big deal.
They're in
for
their
her.
bras, they're like, "Oh, hey, Jess!" Like they're just like
Right.
typical, like.
But you see the hesitation in her, right? They actually don't have a conversation about it, but you see the hesitation in her. And then that scene is immediately followed up by her scar on her leg, right? And so she has to have a conversation with the white dude about her scar. And it leads to further conversations in the locker room, right? Where you see, for, I guess, British audiences or more dominant cultures, or not dominant, but more mainstream cultures, it's a place of bonding. It's a place where you just kind of fool around, right? But for communities of color, that participation in that space is something that we feel, a lot of us feel like we need to be invited into that, right? Without an invitation kind of going into that, it feels a little weird and awkward. But when you add that, and then you have people othering her, and that was a different locker room scene later on, right? It's very, I don't know, it's frustrating, right? Because on one hand, well, yeah, this is just part of her culture, and that's actually something that Jess says. It's just culture, right? It's just something that she grew up with. But for the other girls in the locker room, they don't understand it, and it's a very messed up kind of conversation that people of color often find themselves in, right? And often having to be the voice for their entire community, which is ridiculous, because I don't think a single white person in the history of humanity has ever been expected to define what it means to be white, right? And yet it is a burden that's constantly placed on different people of color.
Right. I mean, that scene resonated with me so much, because how many times have I seen this happen, or have I been part of things where I have to explain, well, like, you speak Chinese, you look kind of Asian, but you don't speak
Filipina?
Chinese. Are you Filipina? So like,
what are you?
Right, what are you? Like,
I hate that question.
I
hate that question so much.
Right,
what are you?
What
I'm
are you?
human. Like, what do you think I am?
Yeah, like, do you know how to cook Chinese food? Or like, what do you do for Chinese New Year? I mean, having to explain all of those things consistently is just hard, right? And just like, you're right, Brenda, like, no white person's ever gonna be expected to explain, well, this is white culture. And I put raisins in unnecessary things.
Okay, that was mean. I'm sorry, but yeah.
That's enough, guys. But right, like, it was, I resonated with that, because I've been in that position, not in the locker room per se, but I've been in that position, and I know we both have too, right? Like, Tori, you, I'm sure, have, like, what does it mean to be Croatian? What does it mean to be Italian? What does it mean to be gay, right?
Fucking like, gay in the locker room is like a fucking nightmare, let me tell you.
Being fat in the locker room is no picnic either.
Right, and with you, Brenda, like, why, like, so you're Latina? Like
but you look white.
Right,
you look white.
Colonization, bitch.
Do you want me to give you a history on how the Spaniards
Spain got to, like, Central America? Sure.
I need to explain to you how the American government changed our name. Like, what, like, Yeah.
Right.
And then it becomes an entire history about, and
right.
It's exhausting. It's freaking
and
exhausting.
You feel like, I don't know, but maybe that's because, my own journey, right, and my own mixed identity. I just feel so inadequate at the end of those conversations. Like, I'm not even, like, I feel like I'm not Asian enough. I am not Latina enough, right? I'm not American enough, right? Like, I feel like, well, I just told you the stuff that I knew, and now I feel bad for not knowing everything.
Yeah.
Right. And it makes yes, absolutely. There's always this, do you measure up to what I think you should be, right? And if you don't measure up, then we're going to put these arbitrary this arbitrary litmus test about what it means to be Asian, what it means to be gay, what it means to be Latino, right? And it's just ridiculous. And I agree with you, Jen, that scene was so unnerving and at
It
the
was
same time
uncomfortable.
so familiar, like a lot of this film actually.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I do like though, and I do want to get to this just because I think I like what the film tries to get at. There's a moment where they've gone to Germany, they lost to Germany, right? Spoiler alert, sorry. And then they're talking about they're at the club, right? And they're talking about how the girls lost. And there's something that Joe says that is so, that made me laugh, but it also speaks again to the Britishness, because I keep coming back to this, where he's like, losing to the Jerrys and penalties is comes naturally to you folks, right? To you Brits, right?
Yeah.
And there you see that line, right? Where, oh, I forgot, Joe's not British, right? Because I mean, if you're familiar with British film, you'll start to pick up the accents and the differences between an Irish accent and a British accent, right? But for me, the entire time I'm thinking, oh, Jess is Indian, right? And this is the core of the film. But then when he comes in and he reminds them, oh, you two are British, but I'm Irish, right? Like the differences in nationality there. And then you start to realize, oh, even whiteness is layered, right? And it's, right, being Irish and white is not the same thing as being British and white, right? And so that is an interesting conversation to have, because I think we all kind of talk about it, right? Yes, I'm Latina, but I think I wouldn't say American first. I'm probably Californian first, because I was born and raised in LA,
Yep.
and I've lived here my entire life. And then I'm an American, I guess. I don't even know, right? But I think we all, I mean, Jen, you spoke about this, how you feel American first, right? And I think that's something that happens often to the children of immigrants, right? You're not exactly from over there, you're from here. So a lot of the culture here kind of becomes your identity. And I thought that was an interesting answer to the entire question of race and culture and identity that the film proposes, at least.
Yeah, and I think, I like that the film doesn't give any easy answers or any answers, right? Like, it's a very open-ended ending, right? Even the relationship between the so-called Joe and like Jess romance, right? Like I actually do remember being upset as a child that like this grand moment where like they're running to get to each other and it doesn't end in the like faded kiss trope, right?
Mm-hmm.
That she stops him, and I'm just like, but why? He's so cute. But now that I like after rewatching that, like I was like, that's actually a really great choice for her to stop him and say like, but culture and family, and that doesn't like my feelings, like that's momentary, that's short term, like that's not going to erase my family, my obligations, my responsibilities to my family, to my culture, my sense of self, right? Like she very much puts herself first and her culture first in that moment, and I really appreciate that. Yeah. And I like that the film didn't give like the tropey answer or the easy answer that everybody lived happily ever after, but it's also with that there's more to come. Like I'm sure like being in America will change Jess.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, and there's going to be a struggle, right? That's ultimately the answer. Because I like that. I agree with you. I like that it didn't end with them, because they do have a kiss, right? And it's like, oh, we'll see where this goes, right? But that means that Joe has to put in some work, right, with the family. He needs to not only understand their culture and who they are,
and we
but
see
also,
that a little at the end, which is refreshing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, but see, that's the implication there, right? That this is going to take work, right?
Yeah.
They're committed to trying to make something work, but that's ultimately not what the film is about, right? It's not a rom-com in that way.
Right,
it's not about, oh, these people are going to be happily ever after. It's these two girls are going to go to the US, play, and hopefully in the future, play professionally and bring that back to England. Hopefully. But if not, they're at least going to play professionally in the US.
Love the scene where Jess is like, but why can't I do this? And her dad says, I was like so good. I think it was a cricket or whatever. He was like, I was the best thrower or pitcher, but I don't know how cricket works or any sport really. He was the best cricketer. And when he went to go play on like the really fancy team, they made fun of his turban, they made fun of his beard, and they ridiculed him, and he never played ever again. And he's like, and I don't want that for my daughter. Like, he's like, I don't want that for you. And that's like in the middle-ish of the movie. And then at the end, you see him playing cricket again, like for the first time in years, clearly with Joe. Like with Joe, like at the fancy schmancy, like garden club party thing. I don't know, what are those called? Like
country clubs?
Country club, there you go, that's the word. I was like, fancy garden party club.
Well, and with that, right? Like even the fact that like the dad combats a type of racism, is still prevalent today. Like it's only been like a couple years since like the hijab just got like went out there with like a sports version, because like so many like athletes asked for that, and it only happened like 2 or 3 years ago, right? And this like obviously that like that xenophobia, the racism continues on to this like 10 decades later.
Like religious headwear just as a whole, right? Like I think about the I know they're not Muslim, but I think about how in France there was the woman in the bikini who was held at gunpoint by the French police and forcibly told to remove her, like the hijab portion of her bikini, right? And you think about like what happens to people who wear religious headdresses or head pieces for whatever religion that might be, right? Because you see it in the Jewish community, right? With yarmulkes, you see it again with the beards, like with the curly cues for Hasidic Judaism, and with the turbans too, right? So
yeah, there's this sense, and I want to go back. I definitely want to continue on this point, but I want to go back to what Jen said about the parents being so protective. I actually think it was you, Tori. Right? It seems like it's a generational thing, right? The overprotectiveness, and this idea of protecting your child from racial trauma, right? I don't know what it's like in other families, but I know in families of color, you always have the talk, right? That one talk where you sit down with your parent and you talk about, hey, okay, so you're different from everybody else. You're brown, you're a woman, you're this, you're that. Any interaction with authorities, whether that be at a job, whether that be in a car, your interaction with these figures of authority is going to be a little different. And I know this is what you're expecting. This is actually how it's going to happen. And this is how you have to interact to survive, right? And I think that's one of the big things with the parents, particularly, right, with the dad. He's so focused on his daughter surviving England and Britishness, right, that he's not necessarily focused on this idea of dreams, right? Because that's nice. It's nice to have a dream, but you need to survive, and you're going to survive as a doctor, right? Because he actually tells her you're going to have a good career. When he gets the A-level results, he's like, oh, you're going to be a good doctor one day, right? And so those are the things that I think about how the dad is so protective, and the mom too, right? The mom is protective for different reasons, and she actually is really odd to me, because on one hand she wants her daughter to be really hyper feminine, and Binky is, and even Binky isn't feminine enough, right? Or she's not
the right kind
her
of
brand of
like or feminine, like
right, exactly. She's not conservative enough, like, right? Yes, she's too British. Yes. And Jess is obviously too tomboyish, right? And so she gets frustrated with both of them. But with the dad, it becomes very much about, we need to protect you, because the world out there doesn't see you as a human being. The world sees you as Indian. You're not British to them, you're Indian. And so we have to protect you from that. And I think that's a very immigrant perspective, right? And I don't want to generalize this, but I think a lot of us see it with our parents and how protective they are of us, right? Like, these are the rules for surviving. This is how I survive. So now I'm giving you the rules so that you survive the same way. And the reality for Jess and for Binky both is that that's not their experience. For their experience is very different, right? It's layered with, yes, their family's immigrant experience, but also with, hey, I am actually British. I did grow up here. I know what it looks like for me here, right? And I think that's a really interesting conversation there that you see with the dad and with his daughters. And he's so protective too, because they're two girls, right? And that brings up the gender aspect of this.
Yeah, and in talking about gender, like I think the film does a really great job of talking about femininity across different layers of what it means to be a woman, right? You have Pinky, and you have the sister, and you have Jess, and you have Jules, right? And you have the mom, and you have Jules' mom as well, right? They all kind of represent the spectrum of womanhood and how different it looks across the spectrum, and like how there are common experiences within that spectrum as well, right? Like, going back to the scar that Tori brought up earlier, how Jess is ashamed of this like really nasty scar that she has on her thigh that she got when she was a child, and Joe helps talk her through that trauma, which is like easy out, but the mom brings up that trauma, saying like, you need to cover that up, right? Like that
how
looks
dare
ugly.
you? Yeah.
Right, how dare you? That's not seemly, that is not feminine enough, you need to cover it up. But how many conversations have we've engaged in, like as women, where like our moms or older generations of women have told us like, you need to like cover that scar up, don't scratch that, right? That's not seemly for a woman. A woman needs to be seen as this and that, right? Even Jules kind of combats some of that with like her haircut, right? Like how it's really short, and she's not the British rose, the English rose aesthetic, and
she's mistaken for a boy several times, like,
right? And like how like her, when she goes bra shopping, her mom's like, just have these like inflatable boob things, right? Yeah. Every girl has that, right?
And like, oh, about the sports bra section when she walks over there. She's like, that'll do nothing for it.
Yeah, but
actually, several comments about both main women's breasts. They were like, they're so small. When Jess is getting her bust measured for the wedding, her sister's dress, like the bridesmaid dress. I don't know what else to call her, but like they're like oh, and then like they're like, you have to squish them to make them tight so they look bigger than they actually are. And Jess is like, I don't want any of this. Like,
she wants it looser because she wants it looser, and the mom's like, oh, who's gonna notice you in a potato sack?
A potato sack, yeah. I also really love the part where her mom was like, that's enough soccer, you're in the sun too much, you're getting too dark.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of just like, and that's something that like, I brought up this last time with Can France, has a camp called Shaded, and he's Indian, and he talks a lot about like his upbringing in Britain, and how his family was really against dark skin, right, which made him feel very uncomfortable because obviously he has dark skin, and like how in Indian culture like whitening creams and bleach creams are just so prevalent, right, to get that kind of milky white skin. In like Chinese culture that I can speak to, right, like we one of the famous like actresses who was now embroiled in scandal, Fan Bingbing, renowned for her beauty, like was made into a meme because she had like so many sun protection hats on for like this one Variety episode. Like she had like this face mask, and she had like this hat that goes over it, right? And then she had like the long sleeves because like she's known for like her milky white skin. And so I think that the film does like a really like, the film kind of touches upon that, like having dark skin is just really bad for you, right? Like it's not attractive. It's like gonna hurt your chances at getting married. It's
especially with that scar.
Right. It's not very seemly. It's not very womanly. Who's gonna find you beautiful? And how traumatizing is that for women here, right?
Right. And in the backdrop of this film, you have a bunch of boys, because you do have a lot of boys in the film, right?
Yeah.
Who are playing soccer, roughhousing with Jess, or they come to see. Yes, they're all shirtless.
Hypersexual.
Right. But even when they're standing out when they're watching the girls, what are they talking about skin color? Because the only thing they're really talking about are boobs.
Yeah, they're kind of she how is number whatever not knocked herself out yet. Like,
exactly. And so you have, I think it speaks to the arbitrariness of these beauty standards, right? And how ridiculous, because it's like one side thinks that this is what it means to be beautiful, this side isn't observant enough to care, right? And so
Yeah.
but in simultaneously we're holding these girls and these boys to account for these arbitrary rules that matter to absolutely no one.
Right. And we are left with those traumas, right? Like going, trying to find a bra can be traumatizing. Trying to find, like, putting on makeup, traumatizing.
Also, too, right, that scene, like, it actually hit me a lot harder as an adult, where they're in their, I don't know if it's the first match, second match, it's right after Germany, when Jess and Jules had gotten in, they're in a fight, there's a lot of tension on the field still, and the girl on the other team says a racial slur to Jess, and she just, like, fucking bops her, like, and she's like not, she gets red carded.
She shoves her.
Or shoves her, yeah, because she's like, she gets red carded, right, and like
gets sent off as a result of that. And actually, and I think that's another thing, right? Racism in soccer, I mean, and racism in any sport is an issue, right? But it's a particular big issue in soccer, right? I mean, a lot of teams have been carded, or not carded, sorry, they've been fined for what fans will do, right? Dani Alves, a prolific and amazing soccer player from Brazil, who plays in Barcelona, was actually tossed a banana one time, right? And in anger, he picked it up and ate it, right? Just to, like, a fuck you to whoever threw it, right? But that's only one example. Thierry Henry, who, again, one of the most amazing soccer stars in the world, has also been a victim of racism. And it's awful, right? Because we're always talking about, like, all right, so if you're a certain color, if you're from a different racial group, you can't just be good enough, you have to be 5 times more, right? These men are, and yet they still fall victim to this shit. So what, like, we're talking about arbitrary rules and arbitrary standards when it comes to beauty. Arbitrary rules that come to that touch on race are also a big concern and a big problem, not just in the world of sports, and which is highlighted in the film, but in the world at large, right? How many more standards are we going to impose on people, and while simultaneously preventing them from being brilliant and wonderful, right? It's awful.
And those same standards is what, is rooted in what kind of motivates her father's fear, right, of her success in this field. Like, who's going to root for the Indian girl in soccer? Like, I think that's something that he literally tells her.
Yeah.
Like, and then he shares his own experience of racism in cricket. And it's one of those moments that really gets her to stop and kind of just doubt herself, right? And soccer is a good platform to talk about those racism things, right? But it's also something that we also combat on a daily basis. Like, when people tell us, like, those kind of things, it makes us think, oh, we can't be actors, we can't be actresses, we can't be athletes, we can't be this, we have to stay within the lane of, like, working class positions. And so for, like, us, just getting an education is just groundbreaking, because our families didn't know anything else other than that, right? But on a daily basis, we're consistently combated with, like, you're not good enough, right? To this day, I still have imposter syndrome. Like, I'm not good enough to be in this meeting with these folks with these ideas, because for some reason, I think my ideas are subpar to theirs, right? And they're acting like nothing. Like, it's that locker room scene again, right? They're acting like it's nothing, like, oh, ha, 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 like, this is just a funny joke. And it's like, it's not a funny joke. You're actually inflicting a trauma by asking me these dumb questions that are very normal for me, by making them strange and othered, right? And,
and I think to kind of piggyback off that too, because, like, I think that there's a way to talk about things, like, if you're genuinely curious in a way that's not like, validate this for me, right? Or, like, I know for this past Lunar New Year, I had asked Jen, I was like, well, what is the appropriate way to, like, celebrate, like, Lunar New Year? Like, what do I do? What do I say? How do I wish Happy Lunar New Year appropriately, right? And you were telling me about, like, the red envelope card and things like that. I'm like, that's really cool. Like, I'm not Chinese. I didn't know that, and things like that. And I feel like there's ways you can ask, like, oh, this is very, like, interesting. I'm very curious. I would love to know more. Like, what has your experience with this been like, right? I'll ask Jen all the time for like recommendations, like, okay, like I really want to get like authentic, like insert whatever food, like do you have recommendations? Like how do I know if it's legit? How do I know if it's like Americanized and like things like that? And I think that there are ways to have conversations that don't make it like other, like if, you know, like you
Right,
don't
like
other them.
right, like I've never felt like you've treated me like I'm part of like a circus act, right? Like that's
Right.
kind of how it feels, is that, oh, we're just like caged,
Right.
exotic caged animals.
Right. Or it's like, okay, I'm this Chinese zodiac and I don't know anything about it. Would you please tell me more? Like, what does it mean? Like, I didn't know anything about, like, what am I? I'm like an earth goat. And I
Yes.
was like, what does that mean? Right. Like, like, I didn't know there were elements involved, and things like that.
Right. But like I think it started from like this position of like we got to know each other through common interests like anime,
Right.
like
As
pop
friends
culture
first.
as
Like,
friends first, and then you start asking me about my culture, right?
yeah, and then like, you know, year 6 knowing you, like the 6th lunar new year in a row, I'm like, okay, so how do we do this for real? Like,
But I think the lesson in all of this is work, right?
Yeah.
It takes work and effort. And I think oftentimes someone will be make a tone deaf question and be like, oh well, now it's unpolitically correct to ask this. And it's like, no, you just can't be a jerk about it. You have to
Right.
put in the work. You can't look at people as if they're what you said, Jen, right? These
Yeah.
circus
Circus
acts
acts.
for your consumption, right?
Right.
Because they're people, we're people, and that takes a real conversation and a willingness to listen, acknowledge, and recognize that your worldview is not the only worldview.
Which is why the ending to the film is so nice, because it's Joe trying to understand Jess's world.
So I had this really wonderful experience at an Indian restaurant when I was in England. I went with my mom. We had a layover, so we decided to stay a few days because we were on our way to Croatia to see my cousin and her baby. She had just had a baby. And we were wandering around, and I'm vegetarian. My mom is not, but we were like, oh, like let's find some vegetarian food. We like did a search, and there was a restaurant right around the corner. And we're like, oh, let's go there. It's in walking distance. We went in. It was Indian food. My mom and I had never had Indian food. It's not super huge over here. Like we have some, but like I've had it, I guess before, but it wasn't like, I didn't really like it. But I was like, let's try it. And we went in. They invited us in. It was so nice inside. The owner came and talked to us. And we were like, well, we've never had Indian food before. You know, we're touring, we're tourists from America. Like, what do you suggest? And he like pulls up a chair, orders all this stuff, and like totally was teaching us how to eat it and like what goes with what. And it was like such a lovely, like wholesome experience. And like, it really like impacted me. I was like, that was so kind. And like, they're like, okay, you put this on this, and it's really good if you like this type of food. Like, you know, if you like spicy, do this. If you want it more, like whatever, do this. And it was such a lovely experience. And it was like this, like, just really nice, like cultural exchange. And it was like the best food I've ever had in my life. I was like, I need to go back now.
After quarantine is over.
Right, like it was just so nice. Like it was really small. There was like 4 tables inside, and he just pulled up a chair, sat with us, and was like, okay, here's how we're gonna do this. And then like some of the stuff, like my mom ended up not liking something. He's like, don't worry, I won't charge you for that because you didn't like it. And I was like, that's really nice. Like, cause he just kind of bought like all these big things of food, and it was just like kind of the pass around the table type deal. It was so great. I mean, we tipped really, really big because like obviously we were like,
I hope so.
Right, because it was like such a wonderful, but I just was like, that was such a wonderful experience. Like they were like, try this, you're gonna love this, and here's the desserts, and it's so good, and like, and I loved everything and I was like, I'm vegetarian, and they're like, well, we only serve vegetarian food for religious purposes, and I was like, okay, it works for me, and it was great. We just learned a lot, and it was very lovely.
And no, you go for it.
No, you go for it. I've talked a lot. Go ahead.
We've all talked a lot. That's the point. I think those moments are really nice. Thank you for sharing that. I think goes back to Brenda's earlier point. You treated that person, and that person treated you as a human first.
Yeah.
And that's what got through. Right at the end of the day, we're all humans. We're all part of this tapestry of human life in the world, and we're all combating COVID right now.
Absolutely.
Right? Pandemic don't know race.
And questions about other cultures and races and ethnicities are totally normal. And it's totally normal to be like, wow, this thing is really fascinating to me, right? Like you see something and it's like, wow, I want to know more about that. There's a drag queen that I really like. Her name's Angina, and she's Asian, and she came out in this like, she came out in this like beautiful, beautiful gown. It was very clearly like cultural. I didn't know what it meant. But it was like so gorgeous, and I was like, what? It had like this headpiece that had like multiple, like it was like so cool. And I guess she had worn it incorrectly and issued an apology later. I don't know if it's because it wasn't her culture. I don't know. I don't know the story, and I'm not gonna spread around false information. But I thought it looked amazing, but it was one of those things where it's like, you can like things, absolutely, but ask about them first. Like, am I wearing this appropriately? Am I giving the appropriate credit, like where credit is due, right? Things like that. If it's totally normal to be fascinated by another culture that is not your own, because it's not your own, right? It's not what you know, and then you see it and you're like, wow, this is really fascinating. I like what this is doing, or I think it's very beautiful. I think it's totally normal. This happens a lot in like religions. I feel like if you're raised in one religion and then you go to something else for another religion and you're like, wow, that ceremony was really beautiful. Like I'm feeling some type of way, but I don't know why I'm feeling that way now because I wasn't raised in this. Things like that.
That brings up an interesting question. Because I know I said I wanted to talk about the music a little bit, and I think this is a nice segue. In one of the things that caught my attention is, and I really love this the first time I saw it, and every time I've seen it, is you hear Celine Dion's The Power of Love, but it's in Hindi, right?
Yeah.
That happens a lot throughout the film, right? And I think it speaks to our collective experiences, right? Whether we're something, and we're hyphenated in some way, right? In this case, Hindi British, right? Or Hindu British, right? For us, it's any kind, whatever our
ex-American,
exactly, right? And so I think it's a really interesting way of highlighting that, right? And that you have this, is she French or is she Canadian? She's Canadian, right?
French Canadian.
All right, so yes, French Canadian song in Hindi, right? And I think it highlights that how we view and interpret our culture, right? Yeah. We have our culture, whether it be British or Americanness, whatever that may be, right? Or that's where we were born, but we're seeing it through a different lens, right? In this case, her Indian culture, right? I know I grew up listening, like I recognize a lot of oldie songs, right? But most of them, I recognize them in Spanish because they've been interpreted by a Spanish singer, and I grew up hearing them in Spanish, right? And I think that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about the soundtrack, right? That you have this. And then the other thing that I really liked was we have, out of all the Spice Girls to be highlighted on here, it's Sporty Spice who we hear a few times in the background, right? Because it's this highlight of, if we're going to say that the Spice Girls were these 5 different types of women, right? We're highlighting Sporty Spice because this is Jess and Jules' brand of women, right? But that doesn't mean that that's the only kind of woman, right? And I really like the commentary that the music kind of layered onto the film.
Yeah, and I loved how much like Hindi music we had going on, and I loved the scene where Jess's mom is watching a program, and there's it's like an Indian program of some sort, and the dad is like, oh, really? Can we watch something else? She's like, no, this is the only thing on in Hindi, and we're watching it.
We're giving it our ratings, yeah.
She was like, it's the only thing on in our language, and we're gonna watch it, and you're gonna deal with it.
And I mean, how many scenes in that movie felt like, oh, I've experienced that.
Oh, and yeah.
That's my mom. That's my dad.
The wedding actually really was like every Italian wedding I've ever been to.
For me, the cooking, right? That whole like, oh, you're gonna learn how to do this, right? With us, it was like, oh, you're gonna learn how to make pupusas and tamales, right? But like Central American tamales, not the Mexican kind, right? And that becomes a whole process, right? And you see Jess throughout the film; she's not enjoying it, but I like it for me.
She's doing it for family obligation and family honor,
right? Well, and that's the thing, right? The mom's telling you got to do this, you got to learn this because it's part of our heritage, it's part of our culture. It's tradition.
Yeah, I love though as Jess is going off to school and her mom's like, at least she knows how to cook, like whatever, I forget the dish's name, the dish, like, and she's like, at least I taught her how to cook that. Like,
but like I think, you know, going back to the food, right? I think that's something that we is a common thread. We can see as a common thread throughout Mulan, throughout Jackie Chan Adventures, right? It's that food that connects us. It's that point of coming to the table, right? Like Mulan is all of them eating at the dinner table. Jackie Chan is always like, you know, eating at the table, and then Jade eating like this talisman by mistake, right?
How did you choose soup?
Right. And you see that with Jess too, and her mom, and learning how to cook a specific dish, right? I think for this, you know, one of the reasons I like this film, and I like that we covered it, is that it adds to the diversity of what it means to be Asian, right? It's not just China, Korea, Japan. It's also South Asia, right? It's Indians being part of this conversation as well, and they often get forgotten about, right? Like they often get dismissed, right? And I think it happens a lot in Asian culture, is that a lot of different like places get dismissed, right? A lot of different peoples get dismissed. And what I like is that this shows like this is another part of that culture. It's another part of that diverse culture that we need to consider. Are there, you know, what about you guys? What do you think about this film?
I was so happy to rewatch it again. It's one of those films that I had just forgotten existed. Like I saw it like every weekend when I was like 12, 11. And then I just kind of forgot about it. I had older cousins that were just like really, really, they played soccer. So this movie was like everything to them. But yeah, I really enjoyed rewatching it again. I'm so happy that it was brought up, because I remember when I think Brenda said it was like, Bend It Like Beckham, and Jen and I were just like, what? Oh my God. Like, we were just like, how did we forget about Bend It Like Beckham?
Yeah, we were just like, oh my God, yeah, that's a perfect choice. I mean, we debated for a very long time. We
did.
And then when Brenda just said it, we were just like, yeah.
Like,
you guys are giving me a little bit more credit than I deserve. Honestly, I was just sitting here looking at my DVDs on here. You know, remember DVDs, that old technology from the early 2000s? Like,
why is that movie a circle? How does it plug into my computer?
Right. And so I was looking at it. I think we were talking about like Cora. You too. And so I was just sitting here, and I was looking at it, and I'm like, why am I not? So I just brought it up. So honestly, it was just happenstance that it happened to be on this side, and I was looking at it. But I'm really happy that we watched it. I love it. Honestly, it's one of my favorite films. I didn't realize how layered and nuanced it was initially when I first saw it. I remember seeing this a lot as a teenager, because I didn't see it when it first came out. A friend recommended that I watch it. She's like, oh, you like soccer, you'll like this. I'm like, all right, cool, whatever. And so I watched it, and it was my mind was blown. I enjoyed the commentary on the family, right? That one scene where she's gonna do a free kick, and the barrier she imagines that her sister and all these different aunties and her mother are standing there,
and they're shaking their heads.
Yeah, telling her don't do this, right? And I remember connecting with that so viscerally, right? Because I'm a lot of things, but I'm not a good daughter, right? Like I'm at least not in the traditional sense that I'm sure my parents or my family would prefer. So I remember connecting with that on such a visceral level, and just having such a connection to that. And watching it now, and mind you, I was a teenager at the time. Now I see it, and it doesn't feel like so much of a barrier. It feels more like the support system that I just didn't understand, right? And I think it speaks to maybe where I am in my life now versus where I used to think I was. And so there's a lot to be said for the coming of age story that we see in this film. And I think when you pair it with things like Mulan and Jackie Chan Adventures, right? Ultimately, it reminds you of the family, right? And how connected we all are to our families, and how formative those relationships are, even when we don't think they are, right? And like moments where they're having dinner, or where you're learning to cook, even if it's because your mom says, what is your mother-in-law going to say when you can't cook this thing, right? Because that's the implication when they're having that conversation, right? Despite that, you're still having that that exchange and that learning of your own culture. And whether it's a positive experience or a negative experience, given time, I think most of our experiences become something that we learn from, regardless of whether or not it's a positive or a negative. Hopefully it's a positive, right? Because we don't want to romanticize trauma in any way. But if it's a cultural experience and it's a good one, hopefully there's lessons in there that we can take away and move forward with. So I'm really glad that we watched this film. And it's also just a funny film. There's so many good, funny moments. Some of them rooted in culture, most of them rooted in ridiculous things that young people do, right? I can't believe I just said that phrase. I feel ancient. But it's a good, nice, and light film. But in keeping with that and our campiness, hopefully for next week, we're actually going to review Relic Hunter. Relic Hunter follows the adventures of Sydney Fox, a Indiana Jones type, or better than Indiana Jones, if you, yeah. And so she's a university teacher, but also a she's an archaeologist, right? And so she finds rare artifacts. And so we're going to talk about that, some of the gender issues that we're seeing. Jen and I love this series from when we were younger, and we've just introduced Tori to it. And so we're looking at it through his eyes right now. So that's going to be a fun conversation.
Watch it on Amazon Prime if you have a Prime thing for free. I mean, you have to have Prime, but like it's with your Prime membership,
yeah. So tune in next week, and we hope to see you then. Bye.
Bye.